Okay, hi, good morning. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Maria. I'm one of the conservation officers here in the Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve. And I also have with me Basil. He's another of the conservation officers.
Good morning.
So today we are going to do this webinar to celebrate the World Wildlife Conservation Day. Normally, when we have a webinar, we invite other people to explain about their research. But this time we thought that was best to talk about conservation, but all the work that we have been doing here in the reserve. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then yeah, we will start. Okay. Basil, can you confirm that you can see my screen? Okay, good. So, yeah, before we start talking about the conservation that we do here in the reserve, it is important to talk about what is wildlife conservation. So wildlife, it refers to all the living organisms that they are not domesticated, let's say. So anything from things that you can find in the jungle or here in the desert, inside in the sea. It can be animals, plants, it can be fungus. And what is conservation? It's basically their protection. So sadly, all wildlife are, like all the species are facing in different terms, they are facing threats. So it is important to protect these species and also the habitats where they live, because they need to be able to live somewhere and also be able to use the resources that they need to survive. So what are some of the threats that they are facing? For example, we can have the habitat loss. So when the cities are just spreading out, then we need to get a space from them. So it can be removing trees, or here in the desert. We also have pollution from our cars, from factories. We have illegal wildlife trafficking. So there are a lot of threats. So what are the ways that we do wildlife conservation? The first one is protecting the endangered species. So basically, there are some species that they can get more affected by these threats than others. It can be because they are a little bit more sensitive in terms of their features, or their populations are in less numbers. So how can we know which species are endangered? We know it through the IUCN. They have different categories. So the International Union for Conservation of Nature, it was created to in order to protect all the species and their habitats. So it kind of put all governments from different countries all together with the same goal. So what they did is that they created the red list of threatened species, and they give different categories to the species to know how likely they are to get extinct. So they value different factors, and then they give them these categories. So here on the bottom, you can see in the picture, there are the different categories. So the least concerned is the one that is the most basic one. So the animals, the species that has this category, that means that they are doing well, that their populations are big enough, and they are fine. And then the ones that are more important to focus on are the ones in the middle. So we have vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. So with these three, so it would go vulnerable, endangered, and then critically endangered. That's when we need to put the focus. And most of the countries, they have their own laws. So also we have other entities that they do their own list. So maybe there is a species, we will see some examples later. There are some species that can be least concern in general, in the global, because the IUCN, they do these categories for the global category. But in some country, maybe this species is near threatened, or the population is lower, or it's decreasing because it's facing a specific threat. So that's why each country, sometimes they do their own list. So for example, the Environmental Agency of Abu Dhabi, they did their own red list of species. And also then we have the National Red List Project, that they get like information from the IUCN, from the red list of threatened species, and also from other places. And then they put it together, and then they kind of like have their own list for each one of the countries. So it is important to also mention that the UAE in 2016 they took out a law that it's not allowed to have dangerous or semi-dangerous species in private houses, let's say. So it can be only zoos, wildlife parks, or research centers, the ones that are allowed to have these species. So this is kind of like a way to reduce the illegal trafficking. And the other way to do conservation is preserving the habitats. So as I told you, not only the species, but also the place where they live. So it is very important. And here in the UAE, there are 43 federal protected areas, which 5 of them are under the Ramsar sites. That's like a category for wetlands. So here you can see the different ones. So it's doing great. Hopefully we can achieve more. So now just a little bit of the DDCR. Most of you, I'm sure that you know us. So back in 1999, they realized that the city was spreading out and was just extending. So they wanted to protect the last part of the desert landscape. So they created a small protected area. And then in 2003, they extended it to the current sites and they established it as a national park, which is the Dubai Desert Conservation Reserve. So on the right, you can see the map. The access here is restricted. You cannot come by yourself, but you can come through a tour operator. So in this way, we kind of control the human impact in the habitat and in the species. So they just, each company, they have their own areas, so we can control their activities. And now we are going to show just a little bit the species that we have, and then we will go inside some of the surveys that we do and what we use the data for. So here for the desert, for the plants, mostly when you go out, you see that the desert is empty, so you have the dunes, and that's pretty much it. Well, it's nothing at all. The thing is that outside, because there is people driving around or there is some human activity, the plants don't really go. There is also so many grazers, like for example, the camels. So the plants don't grow. But with conservation project, let's say, then you can have natural species native that they will grow. So these are some of the species. Actually, some of them, for example, this one on top, Rantherium mepapossum, that one by the red list of species that Abu Dhabi did, it's considered as vulnerable because their populations are not that high. So this is one of the examples of how some species can be protected in one area, but maybe their status is more broad in the rest. We also have different species of mammals, so you may know most of them. Some of them are diurnal, or the other ones are nocturnal. We will talk about them a little bit later. We also have reptile species. We have from lizards, geckos. We have different species of snakes. And from birds, we have around 140 species of birds. We have residents, but we also have migratory ones. Now it is actually the season for migratory. And in our camera traps last month, we found a greater spotted eagle, which is a migratory species. So yeah, it is exciting always to go around the reserve to see what we can find. And now we will start talking a little bit about the surveys that we do, so you can understand what we do here, if just not driving and taking pictures. The first one is the vegetation. So let's say that what we do here in the reserve is kind of like analyze everything in a small, and then we put all of it together. So then we can check that everything is in balance. So the first and most basic thing is the vegetation, because obviously with vegetation, you will have the animals. So for this vegetation, we do it once a year. And on the right, you can see the map. So we kind of have like, we have 100 quadrats. What is a quadrat? A quadrat is a square. 10 meters per 10 meters. Okay, so you see in the picture on the bottom, that's the sticks with the cone. That's the area, and then we have 100 of them. So we have to go to each one of them, and then we have to count how many different species we have, and how many individuals of each species. It might seem that it's not very hard, but it is, because the species are very small. So you have to be bending down and having to count and to differentiate them. And it is, yeah, it is hard. So this year, we found a total of 57 different species recorded. It doesn't mean that it's only the only species that we have in the reserve, but it's at least the ones that we have in our quadrats. So what we do is just put all the data. We also take measurements of the height and the width, and we put it in an Excel. We do our analysis, and basically we get numbers. So what we extract from this? Here in the graph on the bottom, we have, because this survey has been done for several years, so we have a comparison in the different years. So if we see, for example, that there is a decrease in the number of species, maybe there is something that is happening. Maybe we have too many grazers, or maybe there is less rain, or there is some type of contamination. But we are very happy because every year we see an increase. So you need to focus on the purple graph, on the purple bar. That's the number of species for this year. So imagine in one of the sites, so 10 quadrats of this 10 per 10, we got 36 different species. 36, like 36 different plants. It is awesome. So the most common ones are these two, the Arnevia spidissima and the cyprus. So for example, if suddenly we had there is some species, they indicate disturbed area. So when they grow, it's because there is any type of disruption. So if we see that this species is appearing, is when we say okay, why is this species here? What is happening? So yeah, but these plants are good. And then we also have, every year we find new species, or no new species, but we record new species in the reserve. And these two were the most rare ones. And actually, I think that both of them, they only appear in one quadrat in the whole 100. And here you have two videos, so you can see that I'm not lying and that there is a lot of vegetation. The one on the left is from one of the research areas. So we have two research areas. They are fenced, so basically no herbivores come inside. So that's a way to compare how would the desert look like with nothing eating the plants. And then on the right, you can see the gravel plains. Normally, gravel plains, they have a more harder substrate. So the plants, it holds a little bit more the humidity or the water, so the plants can grow easy. However, the dunes, they tend to shift when there is wind, so it's a little bit harder for the plants to grow. So normally we find more species in the gravel plains than in the sand dunes. Now we go with the mammals. So we have the three species of ungulates. So we have the two Arabian gazelles, the Arabian and the sand gazelle, and we also have the oryx. The three of them are vulnerable in that the red list of threatened species. And actually, the Arabian oryx is one of the best examples to talk about in conservation, because they were extinct in the wild. So if you see in that category, extinct in the wild is basically next to extinct. So it's only because there were a few in private collections. So they started doing one of the conservation programs, which is basically try to breed them, try to exchange different collections. So you have a flow of the genes, and they did a reintroduction in different countries. So thanks to this, they managed to bring it down from extinct in the wild to vulnerable. Okay, and here in the reserve, we started back in 1999 and 2003 with very little numbers, and now we have quite a few more. So what do we do, for example, with the gazelles? We have to do a count. This is a little bit hard because here in the reserve, for whoever has been here, we cannot just drive wherever we want. There are certain roads that we need to follow, and then we do our surveys from there. If we needed to count the whole reserve, we would have to be walking, and there are a lot of areas, especially in the south, that there are no roads. So this one, we try to estimate what's the population of the gazelles. So we have on the, so what we did is that we brought 6 teams. We had a lot of volunteers. So we had 6 teams of 3 people per team. And then we were counting the gazelles. We put the numbers and then we did the maps so we can see what's the distribution. So for example, the Arabian gazelle, they are normally more used to people. They are not that scary, and they tend to be next to the gravel plains. So that's why they accumulate more in the center and in the parts in the north where we have watering holes. However, the sand gazelles, they are more shy. They tend to, go away from people. So that's why they gather more in the south. The south is the wilderness area, so there's not a lot of activity, human activity there. And now we pass for the oryx, and I will let Basil.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. I will continue with some of the surveys that we conduct at the DDCR. And Maria was mentioning about the Arabian oryx and how a place like the DDCR is so vital for the species. When it came from extinct in the wild, it was very difficult to bring it back, to bring their population numbers back up to a sustainable amount. So this is very important for us to make sure that the Arabian oryx is doing well in our reserve. And one good way of monitoring their health is by using what we call a body condition scoring methodology. And that basically is twice a year we go out in winter and in summer, and we check the hindsight, so the back of the oryx. So we check that the fat and the muscular part of the oryx, which is primarily the hind legs and the spine. So the back spine of the oryx, as you can see in the picture under. And we can score it from 0 to 5. Ideally, we would like to always have 3s on average, because 3 means fit and healthy, which means that the oryx is finding enough food in the reserve, whether it's from our feeding stations or from grazing from natural vegetation, which exists here. And this year we conducted one in October, so quite recently, and good news, it's staying 3 and above. So this is exactly what we want. We don't need the 5, because 5 means that it's a disbalance. As well as thin, obese is also a disbalance, and ideally we would like to have 3 average every year, and we'll continue to monitor that. Could you the next survey that we do is the spiny-tailed lizard survey. So we have a subspecies called Liptian, and we have quite a healthy population here at the DDCR. The best way that we found to monitor this species is by going around the reserve, primarily in gravel plain where the spiny-tailed lizard is found, and we count the burrows. So the burrows is at the bottom of the photo. If you can see, it's a hole in the ground. And we try to go in spring when reptile activity is coming from winter. Reptiles tend to come out in spring. Just so that not only do we count the burrows, but we could possibly even sight a lot of spiny-tailed lizards, take photos of them. But the survey we conduct is primarily to count the burrows. When we count the burrows, we get an estimation of the population. We're not going to be able to get every single individual, because as soon as they see us or as soon as they see a car coming from far, they'll go into the burrow. And it's impossible to count every single individual. But what we do is check if these burrows are active. So just looking at the numbers here, this last year in 2023, we had 362 burrows that were active. When they're active, it means that there's a spiny-tailed or 2 that are using this burrow. So we can estimate that the population is 350, let's say, so rounding down in this case, which is quite a healthy population considering the size of our reserve, and gravel plain habitat it doesn't make most of the habitat of the DDCR. So that 350 is quite a good number, and it keeps growing, and this is something that we also have to monitor every 2 to 3 years. Okay. Please switch slides. Right, so that was just a quick video of a spiny-tailed. So sometimes we put camera traps in front of their burrows as well, just to see their behavior and possibly what they eat. So what I just showed you was a planned survey. Sometimes in conservation there are moments where you have to act quickly and things that are unexpected. In this case, as you see on the slide, we had to get spiny-tailed and translocate them. So we had to collect the lizards because of there's a DEWA groundwater installation. So DEWA annexed some of the DDCR, and we had to go in and retrieve some of these spiny-tailed lizards that were in the area that was going to be bulldozed, right? So looking at the photos, we spent a lot of time digging and getting the spiny-tailed and then bringing them to a suitable gravel plain inside the protected area. And what was quite interesting about this experience is that we figured out that some of these burrows can go 2 meters in depth from the surface, and the tunnel was 4 meters long, right? So these are pretty incredible structures that these spiny-tailed lizards create. And there's a corner in the corner. So once the 5-hour digging was quite strenuous, we asked that DEWA would send us some help. So they sent this dozer you can see in the corner of the slide. And that really improved the hours of digging. Yeah. Next slide, please. Another species that we like to see how they're doing, and even though they're considered least concern, the Arabian red fox is a species that is flourishing here in the DDCR, and we still are interested to see how they adapt to this environment. What we primarily do with the Arabian red fox is not only do we count their burrows, every 2 to 3 years we try to get a burrow count, just like the spiny-tailed lizard, but also we retrieve Arabian red foxes that have been caught in urban areas, that have been found in construction sites or landfills closer to Dubai. We re-release them here in the DDCR. And one of the projects that we've decided to come up with is to put a GPS collar on one of the foxes, and we released it in September, so about 2-3 months ago. And what will happen is the collar will release itself. There's an automatic mechanism which will release the collar in March 2025, so next year. And the idea is to get a distribution map or a log, a tracking log of the fox when it was released in the DDCR. And actually, this is just an example on the slide. If you can see the yellow line with the white dots, this is what we really want to see, that when we release foxes that come from urban areas, can they adapt to the DDCR? What are their distances? Are they establishing hunting grounds? Because the red fox can establish quite large hunting grounds. And this is a video of us releasing red fox into the reserve. And the way that we're going to collect that GPS collar once it comes off the Fox is with VHF, VHF receiver, which in the past a lot of the falconers were using. Now it's more about they're using satellite tracking and whatnot, but we are a bit old school and we want to use a VHF receiver to relocate that GPS collar. So Maria, if you could play the videos, it would give you an idea of how we locate it. Great. And this is actually my personal project. So I focused on the vultures that come to the DDCR. In the UAE, they're quite rare, but in the DDCR, we have them, if not daily, at least every 2 days, we have recordings of vultures. They primarily come from the Hajar Mountains, which has been confirmed that there are breeding sites there, at least for the lapid-faced vulture and the Egyptian vulture. What's quite interesting about this project is if you look at the Cinereus vulture, the near threatened species on the slide, this is actually considered vagrant in the UAE. But in the DDCR, we get it at least 2 to 3 months. So every 2 to 3 months, we have a Cinereus vulture on camera trap, which makes us think that perhaps they're not so vagrant, and this is exactly why we do these sort of conservation projects, to really get a better understanding of species that come and visit the DDCR. So in order to get even more information on these vultures, the plan is to set up a capturing cage, as you can see on the slide. We put a carcass inside, and the vultures will go inside the cage. We slowly close the cage, and at the same time, at the same moment, we'll go in, try not to harm the vultures, install GPS trackers on their back, collect samples, blood samples, feces samples, even feather samples, just to see if are they only feeding in the DDCR, or are they possibly feeding outside the DDCR? How do they sustain themselves in this area, including looking for toxins, because this is worldwide, this is one of the biggest threat to vulture populations is ingesting toxins and chemicals that end up killing them. So this is something that we would like to check as well in the region, in the area, sorry. The GPS trackers will help us see their movements. So what's considered a vagrant, like the Cinereus, this GPS tracker will give us a log, so a movement map of where it's going. And this will be very interesting. Next slide. So these are just a few videos of what we get when it comes to vultures. Great. Thank you for listening, and back to you, Maria.
Okay, thank you, Basil. So as you can see, we are doing a lot of different projects. In my case, my personal project is nesting in calf trees. So the calf is the national tree from the UAE. It is very important because it grows in the desert. It has very long roots, so it can reach the water that is on the ground. And obviously, in the middle of the desert, to have a tree, it's like the perfect place for a lot of animals. to find shade, to find food, shelter, and also for nesting, because it has a really big canopy and it has thorns. So it's like an extra way to have the chicks protected. So I'm interested in knowing, because we have here in the reserve, we have some species of interest, such as, for example, the Faroe Eagle owls or the buzzards. And we also have some species that they are a little bit kind of like pest or invasive or whatever you want to call it, that they shouldn't be here. For example, the sparrows or the white-cheeked bulbuls, they are species that they are basically almost everywhere. So yeah, I want to see what is the preference of the species of interest in terms of trees, because for what I have seen so far, they choose certain trees. So this one, for example, can be used once I have all the data. It can be used that in the future, if we want to plant more trees, we can plant them in the specific way that maybe they prefer. So what I did is to find all the places in the reserve that we have calf trees. It can be lone calf trees or kind of like a forest, like what we call calf grove, and then try to find which species are nesting in those trees. So of a species of interest, last year I found, well, not last year, early this year, I found the Faroe Eagle owl. For example, this species is considered least concerned globally, but here in the UAE is considered as endangered because the populations are not that big. So I found 3 chicks, and the 3 of them made them. I found them like already out of the nest, and all good. I also found one nest of the long-legged buzzard and one nest of the Arabian great shrike. So what else have I used this data for? So, for example, for the Faroe Eagle owl, we know that it's a nocturnal species, but we exactly when, like it's at midnight or it's at 3 a.m. So when I found the nest, I put 2 camera traps next to the nest, and then I analyzed the videos. So what I found is that most of their activity it's between 7 and 9. That's when the parents, they fly to the nest and then they feed the chicks. And then the rest of the times is maybe there is a movement from the chicks in the nest, or the parent is flying, coming in, because normally there is one of the parents that stays in a branch next to the nest. And then during the day, there is no movement at all. This is the video of one of the parents, how it goes to feed the chicks. And these are just some pictures. So I found that one of the chicks, normally, sometimes the chicks, they can't go out because they fall from the nest. So in this one, I saw that one of the chicks, it went during the day to kind of like on an adventure in one of the branches from the calf tree. And then at night, when the parent went to feed them, the chick tried to go back to the nest, and then it fell. However, the parents still feed the owlet. So you can see in the bottom the parent feeding the owlet. So during the day, they would hide in like under a tree or inside the bush, and then at night they would come out. What other things we do here? So we have the camera traps. This is one of my favorite conservation tools, let's say. So this is a way to monitor species that are, for example, nocturnal or are elusive. It's non-invasive at all. So it's just a camera that you set up somewhere. It can be on a tree, on a rock. It's just static, and then when it detects movement, it will take a picture or a video. So this is great, and we can find a lot of very nice shots. So these are some examples. Here, later I will talk a little bit about the volunteer program, but actually this started from the volunteer program. We have Marios. He is the designated photographer for the DDCR. So he comes around, he takes pictures, and he also has his own camera traps. So we have our camera traps are fixed in 6 locations next to the water holes, but he also puts his cameras a little bit in isolated areas, so we can get very nice information about other species. So here we have a Bonellis. This Bonellis is in Alfaca. That's the watering hole that it's in the south of the reserve. It's the most isolated ones. And here we have a hare. Hares are very rare to sight. They are very skittish. They avoid humans at all cost. So during the day, they are hiding in their burrows or they are under the bushes. And then during the night, they come out. So this camera was also set up in an isolated place in the south. We also have the foxes. So yeah, it is very nice to have this tool. This is from the research area. So in one of the areas that I told you that we have fence, we found the dens, so we could see this they seemed siblings. They were playing around. So how can you learn more about us? We are very active in Instagram. It's one of the easiest channels. So we try to post daily interesting things about the reserve, videos, some games, so you can learn more because we can have like every day almost new things to talk about. We also have the volunteer program. So it all started from people from Instagram that they were interested in coming here to the reserve. So we created the volunteer program. So we have different activities. The most famous one is the change of the camera traps. So basically these camera traps that I showed you before, we have to change the SD cards because they get full very fast. So every first of the month we go and then we have to analyze the pictures to see what came. So normally the volunteers come, we teach them how to change the SD cards, and then we show them around the reserve because the 6 cameras, they are scattered. We have done some trainings to analyze the pictures. We do some events, both online and also like this one, and also in person, like in the visitor center. So if anyone is interested, you can, and it's not part of the volunteer program, you can send us a private message through Instagram, or you can send me an email. My email account is down in the bottom. So you will start receiving emails once we have any activity. And another way, I told you that the access to the reserve is restricted, so you cannot come by yourself. But what you can do is come to the visitor center. So basically, what we have told you, it's nothing compared to all the information that you can find there. It is kind of like a museum. So you have different halls with information about the reserve, the research, the animals. It has an awesome terrace, especially now that it's winter. There is a Costa Cafe, so you can come have a coffee and enjoy. And there is a water hole in front. So now maybe you can find the gazelles or the oryx passing by. And just as a last slide, how could you participate in wildlife conservation? So it's not only about, as I told you, it's not only about the species, but also what we do if we want to protect their spaces. So the first one and the second is to pick up the trash. Here, especially now this last weekend that everyone was out in the desert, we leave trash around. So it's always, good to pick it up so the animals, they don't roam around and eat the trash. Recycling, we can always plant native species. So here in the reserve, we have done some planting of the calf trees, but there are also the mangroves are also native to the UAE. So there are some areas where you can plant a calf tree, a mangrove. And the last one, it's when you travel, it's better when that you inform yourself, because sometimes what we think that it's very nice, for example, taking a selfie with an animal, it actually has a lot behind involving illegal trafficking. So yeah, it might seem cute, but it's not that nice for the animals. So those are only some recommendations. And now we have a couple of questions for you. So if you can answer in the screen. So the first one, for example, next year, if you want to come and participate in the gazelle survey, would you need to know how to differentiate the Arabian from the sand? So we have here 2 pictures. Which one is Basil will launch now the poll. Yes, I cannot see it in the screen, so yeah, so please vote if you know which one is the Arabian gazelle. By the way, Basil, you will have to tell me the results because I cannot see them. Okay. Are people voting? Okay.
Okay, great. So we've had above 90%. So that's correct. You guys picked A, which is Arabian gazelle. Great job,
Well,
guys.
well done. Yes. So the Arabian gazelle, it's the one on the left. They are normally darker in color and more slender. So in the picture in the middle, you can see the difference between the two gazelles. The sand gazelle is a little bit more like chunky and paler, and the Arabian gazelle more, defined. But sometimes the color can be a little bit confusing because the Arabian gazelles, they can be paler in color. So for me, the easiest is with the white flanks on the eyes, you will always find them. So if you are able to see the face, then you can very easily differentiate them. And the second one, this is a calf from an Arabian oryx. The oryxes are white when they are adults, but the babies are brown. So how old are they when they turn white? Basilio? Okay.
Launched.
So we have 6 months old, 1 year old, or 2 years old.
Still waiting on responses. We're almost finished with the responses.
Okay.
Okay, so unfortunately this one was a bit confusing, I understand. It's not 1 year, so it takes less than 1 year for the calf to grow out of its beige fur. It's actually 6 months.
Yeah. So basically, most of the moms, when they have to go to hunt or to feed, they leave the babies somewhere hiding. So the more camouflage they are, the better. So with the cubs, it can be very hard to see them. Normally, the oryx, when you approach them with the car, when you are driving, the oryx tend to go away. However, sometimes you see that they are just around and they wouldn't move. And then when you look, you see the baby that is just, lying down somewhere. So the picture in the middle, it's already losing the brownish color. And then on the right, you can see the 3 stages. So you have the calf, completely brown, and then you have the juvenile, and then the adult. So thank you so much. It went a little bit longer than I expected. But if you have more questions, you are more than welcome to write them on in the chat. And yeah. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Okay, well, so I don't think we have any questions. So thank you so much. And yeah, I hope that we see you again in another of our activities. And yeah, thank you, everyone.